All right, everybody. Good afternoon. Welcome to Power of the Press, using PR to educate your franchise leads. Yeah, come on. Thank you. It's always motivating. Actually there was a quick backstory behind the title of this panel. There was a fiery behind the scenes debate over the use of one word, a particular word in the title. And we're gonna explore that debate a little bit on this panel. And while you're sitting there trying to figure out what that word is, because I know that's what you're all doing. What is the word? We're gonna let you know about that word and why we wound up with what we wound up with. But first, just a little bit of an overview for everyone. My name is Deborah Vilchis. I'm the president of Fishman Public Relations. So clearly, I'm a fan of public relations. And I have a great panel today of people who represent different types of brands in the industry. And all of you, you're here because you're either an emerging brand, or you're a re-emerging brand, or you're somebody who wants to work or help an emerging brand or a re-emerging brand. But there's one thing that you all have in common, one common goal, and that's that you all want your brands to what? I'll let you fill in the blank. It starts with a G. Yeah, you want them to grow. And you're bombarded by people telling you how to do that and what you need to do. You need to do digital advertising, you need to do content marketing, you need to do SEO, you need to do everything. And you need to do PR. And that's where you say, okay, I've only got X budget, I've only got this amount of budget, or maybe I don't have any budget, and you have to decide where you're gonna put the money that you don't even have to spend to the best use. So there's a lot out there. So today we're gonna try to help you answer some of those questions about not just PR, but kind of, what to do with it if you did decide to put your money there, what to do with it to maximize it, and how to make the most of it. And you have questions, we're trying to answer those questions for you. Where do I start? I don't even have a team. Who's gonna manage the PR? What stories do I tell? All of that. So these are the kinds of things we're going to be answering today. And I am going to let the panelists introduce themselves and then do most of the talking. As the moderator, I always say my role is sort of like the corpse at an Irish funeral. Okay, I knew that would get everybody's attention. No one really expects you to say anything, but they can't have the party without you, right? So I'm just gonna do the questions, and you guys can do all the talking. So let's start with Jill, and we'll go across, and you can each introduce yourselves.
Thanks, Deb. My name's Jill Brand, and I run marketing for a fitness company called Pvolve. I'm just sort of curious, by a show of hands, how many people have heard of Pvolve before?
Ooh,
oh, great.
Impressive.
Okay, more than I might have feared, I guess. So my marketing is getting some of you. That's great. We are an on-demand company. We have a streaming platform that you can access our workouts, as well as a franchise business. We are a more nascent franchise brand. We've got 53 locations awarded, 17 open. We'll have 25 open by probably about January. So we're definitely kind of on the smaller, more emerging side of the house. We've been around 7 years, franchising for about 3. And you may have heard of one of our members. Her name is Jennifer Aniston, and about a year ago, she joined the brand after falling in love with the workout and seeing her own transformation through it. She approached us and asked us to help spread the word. Her exact words was, "Everyone needs to know about this, and I can help. Can I get involved?" And we were like, let's think about that. Yeah, you can get involved. And she's since been one of the owners of our business. So that's That's me, and that's P-Volve.
Hi, I'm John Sika, Chief Operating Officer from Batteries Plus. Since I guess this is a thing now. Has anyone heard of Batteries Plus? Yeah, good. We are a national retailer of power solutions. We like to say we're the power experts. If you have a need that is battery related or power related, we're your destination. And we are about 70% retail, 30% B2B. And over time, and what was really important to me about this conversation and thinking about this audience and why I was very excited to participate is because I believe that PR, done well, is the best bang for your buck you can possibly get, especially in this day and age. No one ever comes up to me and says, "Hey, John, I saw your Google ad." Or, hey, I saw this, search term pop up when I searched for you guys at the top, or I saw the map pin. But I get feedback every single day about the stories we tell through PR, and it is by far, to me, it's the new broadcast. It is where smart brands and smart personalities are going to tell their story and create authenticity around their voice.
Hi everyone, I'm Abby Fogel. I'm Vice President of Brand Management and Communications at Unleash Brands. We are a platform company serving families and kids. We have 7 brands under our platform, from adventure parks to karate lessons to little gym movement classes. We've got it all serving moms and families. We've got about 2,000 locations open or under development and serve 25 million families annually.
I'm Ashley Mitchell. I am the VP of Marketing for East Coast Wings and Grill and Sammy's Sliders. And if you haven't heard those, you haven't been paying attention, because Sam's been on stage, I think, 3 times already talking about them. So East Coast Wings and Grill has been around for almost 20 years, and we are a regional brand, family dining. And then Sammy's Sliders, we're getting ready to start franchising, hopefully by the end of the month, maybe next month, depending on fun FDD filing things. We are in the process of building our 2nd location right now.
Great, thank you. So we have food and kids and retail batteries and fitness. And also, if you can't get the Friends theme out of your head, just try, I know. Just stop now. Sorry about that. Okay, so did anybody figure out the word? There's a word, what? It was generate versus educate was the debate. Because over the years, it's been PR for generating franchise leads, and people utilized it and relied upon it to generate franchise leads. And then we have a school of thought saying it's not really a lead generator anymore as much as it is an educator. Once you already have your leads in the system through other means, you can use PR to get them through the sales funnel and get them to sign along that dotted line faster. So it's an education process. So I guess I'm going to turn this debate over to my panel. I think, John, I'll start with you on this one. Is it a generator? Is it an educator? What do you think?
I think it's both, and I'll be controversial, but definitely a educator, and I would use a slightly different word. I'd call it a validator. It's a, does anybody have an ambassador program among their franchisees, or a group of franchisees you can point potential candidates to talk about your brand? Has anyone done that yet? I see a few small hands. It's something that's critical as you scale to have that dedicated group. And PR done well, it's easy to get caught up in the one individual release, and the next release after that, and the next release after that. But really, you should be thinking about it as a body of work, and a body of work that's out there validating for you 24 hours a day. All across the internet, and not just for your brand and what you're doing and the franchise opportunity, but also for you personally. And you need to be a personality that's active in the PR and in those conversations, because in many instances, franchisees are buying you as much as they're buying a concept. And this is a key trust mechanism that's already pre-built for you. And as you build that body of work, it almost plays automatic chess for you, I'd like to say. I mean, it's something that as you're on a good cadence, people have already read about you, read about the concept, and they may be just reaching out for an inquiry, or they could be coming to a discovery day and see your latest news, and it may push them over the line before they even come in just because they're so hyped and they're seeing your name out there in the news and they want to be a part of it.
And to piggyback on what John said, PR is not just sending out a press release and expecting it to do something. That is 100% not what it is. Is that part of it? Sure, you send out press releases, you pitch the media, all of that to get the story out there, but then what are you doing after you get that? And that's how you're gonna generate and educate your leads. And you have that great coverage. Are you repurposing it on LinkedIn? Are you putting it in emails to potential prospects to make sure that they know that you're getting this press? All of that stuff works together. It's not just sending out a press release and thinking that everyone's gonna flood to your website, because they won't.
We've actually had a lot of success with podcasts in particular as a newer brand, and one that is quite nuanced. You know, we're this workout method, we have our own equipment, we have a streaming platform, we have studio businesses. It's a lot to kind of unpack. And the opportunity to speak long form via podcasts have been incredibly impactful for us, from both an education tool as well as a generating tool. We actually sold a 5-unit deal on an earned podcast, which was pretty amazing. And then so you've got that piece of content, and now, you know, to your point, like, what do you do with it? We cut it up 100 ways to Sunday. We run it as paid ads. Some of our most performant ads are actually seeing the recording of a podcast. It's like a very common type of medium on paid that's performing really well, and specifically working really well for us. So, you know, it's about the initial press activity, and then all the different ways in which you can leverage it to drive various parts of your business, for sure.
It's funny because I thought I was the why not both, but it sounds like all of us are the why not both for lead generation and lead education. And I think also it's the piece of content that you are putting out there can have different goals. So part of it is for lead generation. If you're announcing new deal signings, maybe you're trying to attract like-minded people like the deal that you just signed, or maybe it's a podcast, more thought leadership that is for lead education. So I do think it can be both, and different pieces of PR content can have different goals.
Okay, I think everybody touched on that. Played a little Switzerland there on the it's both, but that's okay. I mean, it's valuable for both things. What I'd like to find out from you more is more of the million-dollar question now that everybody wonders is, okay, so you say that it leads to the deal, or you say that it leads to the lead, and you say that it does this, but how can you actually quantify and measure to prove that? Because these people, again, X limited budgets, they've got to prove that it's working. So anybody want to address that? Who wants to go first?
I can go. I mean, we love looking at numbers, and we look at, you know, organic traffic and direct traffic to our site, you know, timed along with releases. We also have region-specific or city-specific or market-specific pages that we tie releases to sometimes, and we can see a result to those pages when we have PR releases in those, or earned media or whatever the case may be, in those local markets, and, you know, driving directly to those pages. To, you know, all the comments that were just made, and you know what, you know, Abby was just saying too, it's social engagement is a key measure that you should be watching, both for your brand pages and your personal pages, as you're sharing and resharing these releases throughout the network. And you can see the impact of great media and great PR savvy, you know, through those you know, measures. And the social media one, it's great because it's instant. It's I mean, you can watch it throughout the day. It's actually really fun to you know, watch the results.
Not us marketers watching our own marketing.
Anybody else have anything on the measurement piece before we move on? Okay, well then let's talk about what to PR. So if you're seeing the PR get results, are you seeing any specific type of story? Is it the franchisee profiles? Is it thought leadership? Is it news about new products? What's working better than anything else, or what's popping up to the top?
I would say it's the stories that have a human element of some sort. It's, from time to time, people are going to put out things about what your results were. People love numbers, how many you've sold, how many you've opened, all of those kinds of things. Those are important, but it's the ones that can have some sort of emotional tie and to really tell a story. And you probably have those stories and don't know that you have them. And that's the biggest thing, is how are you capturing those stories? So capturing them from your franchisees, talking to them and getting those little nuggets. If you have conversations with your franchisees, they'll tell you stuff that they don't realize is important and impactful that you can then turn around and use. So making sure that your team, whether it's your FBCs, making sure that they know when they hear something to come and tell whoever's running PR in your company, so that you can take that and really blow it out. And then just talking to your founders and CEO and seeing what they don't know that they don't know. They've been in it for so long, they're too close to it sometimes to really know what is the story. So having those conversations and picking out those little things that are things that people will latch onto because there is that human element behind it. Those always perform the best.
Yeah, and I think for an emerging brand, a lot of it is about brand awareness, especially if you're in a newer category, just getting started. Unleash Brands is a little bit unique in that we were acquiring brands that were 45 plus years old, but as a platform company, we were brand new. And so while people were very familiar and had brand recognition for the brands that we owned, they did not know the platform company. And so we had to do a lot of brand awareness PR for Unleash Brands so people understood what we were doing as far as consolidating these brands that serve moms and kids. And so there was a lot of storytelling and that thought leadership with our CEO, getting him on podcasts, like I said, to long form tell the story of what we're doing and what our goal is to build this, sort of Candyland map for youth enrichment for a child's journey. And so I think that's really interesting for an emerging brand, just getting your story out there and start building that brand recognition for you. And a lot of that is also what you want to be known for. And so for us, we're also very focused on being a marketing and technology company. So while we're serving moms and families, the heart of what we do is really marketing and technology. And so we work with our PR agency. You might know who they are. But we work with them because we want to be talking about topics that are in technology, that are in marketing, and we want to be, a resource for those, and we want people to tie us to that. And so I think a lot of it is also just brand awareness as far as when you're thinking about what do I PR, if you are an emerging brand, some of it's just going to be like getting people to know who you are and what you're doing and what you value as a company.
And why they should care.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's the key. I mean, value is the word I would key in on as well. You want to share your values, and I mean, in our case, that is, we value franchising, and we value the opportunity to make people's dreams come true. We value, responsible franchising as well. We value sustainability and diversity, and those are all stories we're telling out there in the market in a candidate-facing way. To Abby's point, as you're building a platform too, I think it's important you consider different audiences and potential equity investor audiences along the way too that will be interested in other aspects of your story that make you a sustainable long-term investment. And these are all things you can do that appeal to both candidates and potential investors along the way. And it's a tool that can get you reach and enter into conversations and discussions that your brand may have never been a part of before.
Yeah, and I would add for us, we have had a lot of success with also kind of trend-based stories for our category. So, looking at trends in fitness and really positioning ourselves as leading the way, positioning our talent, our internal talent as experts within it as well. You don't want it to be too self-serving, but you want to have your moments of making sure that you're including your own perspective as well. But that's been really successful for us. And also, press tends to beget more press. So the more you're out there, the more you will get out there. So the more we're putting our experts out there, the more they're being, we're getting inbound, getting quotes from our experts for other pieces. So looking at the category and seeing how you can really make sure that your own business is being seen as someone kind of leading a lot of the innovation in that category can be really helpful.
Thank you. And before we jump to the next question, we had a panelist who unfortunately came down with mono and COVID at the same time. That's a lot of fun. And she wasn't able to make it, but she did, in answering this question, she had submitted some thoughts to me that I thought were super helpful regarding the what kind of stories. And she's with the Chief Growth Officer with Zbart International, an automotive franchise. And she said that based on engagement rates, stories that help the prospect see themselves over the finish line via franchisee profiles, followed by new product releases or news that shows increased revenue potential. And lastly, pieces like awards with photos of franchisees together showing the spirit and camaraderie that comes from being a part of Team Zbart. So those are just some ideas, it kind of all works together. I'm gonna move on to this thought of consumer-facing PR versus business or B2B focused PR. A lot of the clients that we work with very much separate the two, and they have a whole separate program and a team and a budget for consumer, and then another one for the franchise lead development. So I know each of you had some thoughts on this one. I'm going to start with Ashley, and then we'll kind of work our way around.
Yeah, so in my opinion, they work hand in hand. Consumer drives Fran Dev drives consumer. And so they have to be singing the same song. They might be on different verses and doing different things and going toward different prospects, but you have to be saying the same thing. You don't want your consumer off over here doing something that has nothing to do with what you're doing on the Fran Dev side. And then you can use that consumer PR and repurpose it as Fran Dev content as well, and vice versa. It's the way that you use it and the way you position it towards whatever audience it is that you're working on. So I know in our organization, it all falls under me, and we do it as a combined effort. We don't have a separate, call to talk about Fran Dev PR versus consumer PR. We talk about it all at the same time because it does work so closely together, and I need to know what's going on in both of them to be able to repurpose them the way that they need to be.
Ours works a little bit differently in that we have them very separated as far as consumer and franchise development. But again, they still both have to work hand in hand and talk to each other. And so while I'm working on more of the business objectives for franchise development, anytime we get a PR hit for consumer, to Ashley's point, can certainly be repurposed for franchise development. And we love doing that. So this summer we did a big PR push for one of our brands, The Little Gym, around the Olympics, and had a lot of really awesome TV segments for our franchisees. And so we use that a lot for franchise development, and it showcases to our candidates that are in our pipeline, hey, these are our franchisees on all these local news segments that we were able to get for them and help them in their local marketing efforts. And it shows them of kind of like life as a franchisee, okay? I could be on this news station talking about the Little Gym and with my Little Gym students in class, and my franchisor helped me get that spot. And so we email those segments out, we use them on LinkedIn, and again, it was done by the consumer PR team, but can be used for franchise development to educate your candidates that are in your pipeline, and again, show them what life can be like as a franchisee, and also creates that like sense of pride too, when they see the brand that they're considering out there getting TV segments, getting news segments, being quoted as maybe the expert in the field, also creates kind of a sense of pride that they want to belong to that brand because they are very relevant and in the news.
Yeah, I'd very much agree. I mean, we had a similar, wasn't the Olympics, but we did get awarded, $7.5 million from the Department of Energy to support free recycling for consumers of lithium battery to, begin the domestic supply chain for lithium recycling. And through that was very consumer-facing. Our leadership, on many different news outlets, talking about the recycling program, getting an instant response. Fielding questions from reporters and news anchors on different chemistries and how they recycle. And I remember one reporter told a story. She goes, "Oh, I have this old lithium battery in my trunk." And we're like, "That's not a good idea. You need to bring that in." And it's a good way to show the expertise of your brand and really what you're good at. And believe me, I mean, the next day our candidates were saying, "Oh my gosh, I saw this out there about you guys. Tell me more. How do I get, how can I become a part of this?" And yeah, the synergy there is just amazing. It takes both. I mean, you really have to figure out, especially as founders, where you put your time and how you want to focus. But it is gonna, that commitment to the process and making it part of your thought process, not getting lost in the operation, but coming up, getting some air and saying, "Hey, I need to get this out," makes all the difference.
Yeah, I'm not sure I have so much new to add to that. I mean, at PVolve, we do have a separate consumer agency and a franchise development agency, but there's a lot of crossover, and certainly as our consumer press hits, we see increased traffic to our franchise website. Instantly, you can immediately see when you look exactly when some big consumer press hits. And all of those opportunities get surfaced to our franchise leads as part of nurture campaigns. So they're very, very mutually kind of symbiotic.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think people forget your prospects are consumers too. Everybody's a consumer of something. So if they're seeking out information about the latest fitness trends and they come across a story about PVolve, but they also happen to be somebody who's looking for a business, and now this is the fitness brand that they've decided to go with. But they were flipping through that fitness magazine or website for a totally different reason, just to look for new workouts. And they wind up becoming a franchisee. And I really like what you said, Abby, too. That's a great point, how a potential franchisee kind of seeing, hey, the company made one of their franchisees a rock star in their local community by being on TV. I kind of want to be that too. All these things are a pull.
I would just add one more thing. Like sometimes for us, some of the tougher work is like, how do we inject franchise into some of our consumer PR? Because to your point, they're reading an article, something, and they might not inherently know that we are even offering franchise. So sometimes the more strategic thinking has to come in. How do we use our consumer marketing to also more directly tie into FranDev, which we're getting smarter about as we go.
And I would just say to those in the room that are just starting, do that now on not just PR, everything. Include a franchise message on all your consumer marketing and PR as you're getting started, because if you do it from the beginning, your franchisees are used to it and they don't get upset about it. If you wait until you're 10 years in and then you start adding franchise messaging, they could get upset about that their consumer message has a franchise tie. If you just get everybody used to it and educate your franchisees on the point of doing it, it'll save you a lot of headaches.
That is so true.
And we're done.
Yeah, really great points. And in fact, when you're opening new locations, obviously PR is going to be a big piece of what you do to get awareness for the new location. And by virtue of that person, the franchisee, just saying that they are a franchisee, this is a new franchise, gets the word out. And somebody might say, oh, I've never heard of that before. And then they look to see if there's an opening, in their market or territory in their market to open one. So all of these things, it might not feel like franchise lead development PR, but it is. It turns into it somehow, magically. Okay, let's talk a little bit about how you support it and the importance of having somebody at the top managing and how much time it might take, because a lot of emerging brands, it's maybe the founder is just the only one still really involved, and they don't have a big marketing team, and they don't have Abby's, and they don't have Ashley's. So what does it really take to effectively manage, and how much time does it take to manage the agency?
That's a big question. It does take time. So you have to dedicate time, whether it is the founder or somebody on your team, there has to be somebody that is dedicated and accountable for it, or it won't happen. Because the agency can only do what they can do if you give them information. They're gonna come to you and give you ideas and things like that based on what they know about your business. But if you're not telling them those stories and activating and actually doing something and feeding them that information, it's gonna be super generic, and it loses that human element, and it loses why you are what you are and why people want to be a part of it and all of that. So you definitely have to dedicate time. How much time? I mean, I know myself, I dedicate a handful of hours every week to doing something. There are weeks that I should do more, and I have emails sitting in my inbox right now that say we need this stuff ASAP. But that stuff then's not going out, and that's my fault. So you definitely have to have somebody that is communicating and giving that feedback, because otherwise you're either going to get nothing because your agency's hands are going to be tied, they can't do anything, or you're just going to get stuff that is not necessarily going to move the needle the way you want it to, because it's just going to be generic that doesn't really tell a story.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Your PR agency doesn't know what's happening within your franchise system unless you tell them. So to Ashley's point, they don't know that you just signed a 3-unit deal with this franchisee who's got background in franchising, who maybe owned a different franchise and sold it and now is interested in, like, they don't know all the intricacies that you know in your, day-to-day role. So making sure that's communicated with them. There's a good deal of going back and forth with the PR agency to tell them that stories. There's a good deal of communicating internally with your executive team, with your other cross-functional department teams to understand what they're doing as well, to kind of pull those different PR stories, whether it's a big initiative that they're rolling out, maybe a new product, service, or again, speaking with your recruitment team to understand the latest deals that were signed and the profiles of those individuals. And so you're communicating back and forth with the PR agency, but there's also a good bit of communicating internally, and there's probably follow-up information that you need and things like that. So it's definitely a cross-functional role to get PR done.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great description, and even I'm up here like, oh my gosh, that seems like a lot of time. and it is, to make it easier, especially for the founders and emerging brands in the audience. I mean, the advice I would give is don't be constrained to a point in time. And so I think it's, you would, whether it's yourself or you working with an agency, you may be like, okay, what happened this week? Oh God, I gotta think of everything. Like, no, think about what happened the last 12 months, maybe even longer. I mean, just because it's not new news doesn't mean it's not news. I'm sure if you go through the Rolodex in your head, you can think of a lot of things that could potentially be newsworthy. Give them to your partner, PR agency. Give them to whoever may be on your team and marketing that's running with this for you, and let them go to town. And don't get constrained, and don't be afraid to be repetitive. I think, again, it's the same stories shared in different formats and different media and different channels, I mean, so on and so forth, can be very, very effective and certainly reinforce the messages you're trying to send as a brand. Abby, you look like you're about to hop on with something.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I would reiterate what you said there and just also say that it doesn't have to be something that just happened yesterday, right? Like, just really think about the last couple of months, what happened, and also externally, they don't know what date you rolled it out or what day you talked about it. And so you can recreate those stories again a couple different times, tell them a couple different ways. And there's different channels too. So maybe you did an initial press release, but now you've got your CEO or another leader on a podcast talking about the same thing a little bit later, but reiterating that message to your consumers, to your market about what you're doing in the latest and greatest there. And I would also say, if you are a founder who's building a strong leadership team, don't be afraid to let others speak. As a founder, you always want to be kind of the face of the brand. But if you're making the right hiring decisions and hiring some really qualified executives to be on this journey with you, also let them be the subject matter experts and speak on different topics that are relevant to your industry, which will show more of the depth of your leadership team. And for franchisees, especially potential franchisees, we'll also let them get to know a couple different people than just the CEO, and we'll get them familiar with, like, oh, they've got this really talented CIO and COO with a lot of different experience. So I would also say, as a founder, don't be afraid to let your other executives be thought leaders and get a little bit of the limelight as well.
The only thing I'll add is I think to the point of kind of the workload, what it takes, the one thing I would not write off as part of this is just making sure you're doing the work to understand the value that you're contributing to the organization. It's important to show the results that PR is delivering because it is delivering results, but it can also be one of those functions that people look at in 6 months and they say, we need to do some cost cutting, and what's the value that PR has delivered? And you want to be able to answer that question. And so it's important that as part of that exercise of mining the right stories, putting the stories together in the right way, pitching them in the right way, remember to make sure that you are looking at the value you are delivering, and there is value. So don't forget to kind of account for that too.
Also, you can save yourself time if you plan. And plan what you're going to do with, like, if you know a press release is coming out. And so take advice from what I did and don't do it. So last week, I knew a press release was going out on Tuesday. I knew it. I was waiting for it to hit. I didn't think ahead and say, well, I should just write all of the content that I'm going to use to repurpose this. I knew what the content of the press release said. I had the final. Could have done that ahead of time. Instead, I was sitting at a bar in Washington, D.C., trying to create content as the press release went out. Could have saved myself some time and done that ahead of time. So think about how you're going to repurpose that content and what you're going to do. Plan it out. It'll take a minute to plan it out, but once you do, then you don't have to be like, oh no, now there's this topic, like timely thing that I need to get out and I need to figure out how to do it.
Oftentimes, the best content is created at a bar, though. I will say.
That's true. That's true. And I had a lot of brains helping me because it was a franchise conference. So,
Yeah, I mean, on the agency side of things, we're great at a lot of things, and we can tell the stories, and we have the contacts with the media, and we know how to do it. But we have to have the material. Like, we can't read minds, right? So you have to feed us what we can put out there. And another thing is, a lot of times the clients will not even know that a story is a story. Like, they think they don't have anything. And I remember once we were talking with a founder, and we were just getting to know her a little bit, and she told us that she came from we just asked her about her background, and she told us that she came from a family of 9 kids. And we were like, oh my God, really? That's a lot. Tell us about that. And we wound up doing this great story pitch that just got picked up about how it made her a better leader, like growing up with 9 kids in the family, because it was like growing up in a big family, you become a master of the art of negotiating. And she developed great negotiation skills. And it got picked up, and it was just like a little drop in the conversation. So it works both ways. Your PR team has to be able to recognize a story, but you have to also, feed us some of the obvious stuff too. Okay, I just some of you touched a little bit on repurposing, and that's so important because these days, I don't know anybody in this room, maybe you do, get up in the morning and just turn on, Good Morning America and watch it and wait for, ooh, what can I see on there? What brand's gonna be featured, That's not what happens. So it's important that beyond the day that coverage comes out, you figure out ways to repurpose it, because that podcast that led to that 5-unit deal, it wasn't as if somebody just heard it that day that it aired, right? You said you clipped it up. So why don't you talk a little bit about what you do with your PR to get more mileage out of it? If we could go across, that would be a great way to end it.
Yeah, I can start. I had a boss who used to always say, like, we get sick of our marketing a lot quicker than than consumers do. So I always remember that. Sometimes we have this desire to create new content, new, when in fact, consistency of message is actually what is going to deliver results. So we get the most mileage possible out of a single piece of content that we can. That's everything from, as I said earlier, cutting down this podcast into multiple, variants of an ad that we run unpaid. A single shoot will deliver, let's call it 50 images and 20 videos. That will last us 6 months between paid and email. And so too with our PR. We will clip from the story. We will lift quotes that go on our website, that go in emails, that go in SMS campaigns, that go on paid social. So, a single piece of content, and especially PR, which is, again, it's so credentializing, will have legs for months beyond the piece itself.
I would add, and this may be uncomfortable. I mean, it was for me at one point when I started down this path. But as founders and executive leaders, I would say you should be single-minded about growing the size of your social networks and using those social networks and those of your team, and encourage them as well to really get the maximum reach you can from the content you're producing. And through that, I mean, that is very much, it's the now, but it will continue to be the future of sharing this content, growing your reputation, the reputation of the brands you're trying to build, and really being that key point of authenticity for whether it's a clipped up podcast, a news program where you appeared, or whatever the case may be that you're trying to share. Getting that out there immediately and repetitively. And getting the maximum reach possible. It's amazing to me when I go through some of the stats that I see, both through things that we just do and things that our PR team helps us do, how far and how many eyeballs get on this stuff. It's truly amazing, and it's I hate to say it, next to free, as it can get.
Yeah, there's a lot of repurposing to be done for your PR content. So obviously on social, for the business platforms, we post a lot of it on LinkedIn, email out to our lead database, use it on our website as well. One audience that I think is often forgotten because we're all so focused on our consumers and our future franchisees is just your internal audience. And so we're also very mindful about sharing PR with our internal team. That creates a whole different sense of pride for your employees and your team when they get to see the company that they work for in the news and spreading the positive news of what you've got going on. So we have a learning management tool like an intranet if you all have that, or maybe you're building one. But we also make sure that all of our PR hits, whether it's a podcast or a press release or we're featured in a magazine, are also all posted. And we've got a little section that's like Unleashed in the News. And we make sure it all goes there too, so they can see all of the good stuff we're doing, all the press we're getting. And so I think that's an interesting audience too, that we're so focused on our consumers and our candidates that we often forget about our internal team. And so we also make sure that when these hits do happen, we also email them out to our entire executive team, to John's point as well. They're active on their social channels, and so we send out the press release to them and ask them to share with their networks and help us get some more mileage out of the PR that we're working on.
I think you guys covered it all. I don't think there's anything else. I will say, though, if you are having your executive team or anyone on your team sharing the content, make sure that you ask them to share it in a way that's authentic to them and not just sharing the same thing every single person, because people can, when they're doing their research and candidates are looking and they're looking up the team and who's supporting them, if everybody's posting the exact same thing in the exact same way, but making it sound like it's from them, and it's not like they're reposting it or something, they're just literally all copy paste the same thing, that is going to be a red flag to some people. And also, if you're not comfortable, to John's point that, it's a little bit uncomfortable sometimes to do that and it's a little more self-promotional, you can have somebody do it for you on your behalf, but make sure they understand your voice, because I have seen things where I can very clearly tell, and I don't know that everybody else can tell, but there are certain people that I know really well, and then all of a sudden now they're posting on LinkedIn and it sounds nothing like what they sound like. So I'm like, oh, they're having somebody do that. And you can tell, and it will come through. So just make sure that anybody that is doing that for you understands your voice and how you would talk about things.
Yeah, everybody has their bullshit radar, and my bullshit meter, I could smell it a mile away when I read it. All right, so we have just a few more minutes for questions. Or unless was there any burning thoughts inside any of you that we didn't touch on that I should have touched on? Okay, any questions from, oh my gosh, lots of questions. Okay, Go and then you could just talk loud. There's not a lot of people, and I don't think there's anyone with a mic. Oh, do you have a question?
Yeah, I was just wondering if, real quick, you could share what your budgets look like for PR.
Okay, who wants to go? You want to?
So we have a couple different brands under our platform, so work a little bit differently than a single brand. But I would say out of the overall budget, we're spending about 20% of our overall budget on PR. Obviously, doing a lot of lead generation in various different capacities, like digital marketing. But PR takes about 20% of our lead generation budget. Again, ours is a couple different companies rolled into one, so a little bit different, and then also paying for press releases, and that you have to evaluate as well. If you put out a press release, maybe you want to include a photo, so that's a little more. Maybe you want to include a video, so that's even a little bit more. And so understanding the goals, and sometimes we will include a photo if it's a really awesome one, or a video if we're really trying to make a splash with whatever we're communicating. But I would say for our lead generation budget, about 20% of that is going to PR.
Yeah, and I mean, within that, I think you have to also think about what are you funding out of profit and what is going to be franchisee funded, and charges that you can attach to whether it's a store opening or out of their marketing contribution as well. I mean, we spend, I would say, a significant amount. I mean, we're a big company, and the number's pretty big. But it's worth every penny, and there is a portion that we fund, for franchise development that's out of our profit, and all the consumer facing comes and is funded by our franchisees.
Ours is the same. I would say we spend probably about, percentage-wise, maybe 10% of ad fund dollars toward PR, but that includes not only like agency retainer and, to Abby's point, press releases and things like that, but also things we're doing with influencers, and we're funding, if there's a pay-to-play in that space, or we're giving gift cards and things like that. And then a smaller portion of the budget comes from that we fund for FranDev.
Yeah, go ahead, Joe. No, you. Seriously?
So I'm asking for someone who, I don't know, maybe has 25 units or something, and they want to know how much would they have to save, or how much should they be putting to start something. So if you were to give them advice, what would you say per month that they should budget?
I can step in here, just help a little bit, because obviously we scale like us at the agency, so we work on a monthly retainer fee, and you pay this amount to get this kind of service. And if your service right now, we have a division of our company, Franchise Elevator, that works with the emerging brands just for that reason. So if you're just looking to get some stories out about existing franchisees and profiles on the founder to help you generate those leads, and then you maximize every penny of that by doing everything that they said to do to repurpose it. So the retainer fees can range anywhere from $3,000 a month to upwards of 20, depending on what the size of your brand is and what level of service. So hopefully that helps you a little bit. Does that give you a better idea? I don't know. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions?
I guess kind of going off that point, for someone who is just starting out and wants to keep PR, I guess, in-house for the time being, and then move to an agency, do you think it's worth to invest in PR platforms like Muckrack or Meltwater that have like tracking and contacts available for someone who has to do it in-house, or how would you recommend like getting those media contacts and doing it themselves?
So I did that in a brand that I worked for about 15 years ago, and I used Meltwater and had some contacts there. It was hit or miss, honestly. Some of them are good, some of them are bad. It did help from an overall tracking, getting me some people that were better, but for the most part, I was able to find better contacts myself. It took more time though. So it was more research on, okay, we're gonna talk about this market and who I'm going after and all of that. And it was a big chunk of my time. So it was way more time than we were talking about, how much time do you spend on it? At that, I was probably doing 15 hours a week when I was doing all internal PR myself and had no support. But like I said, I used that tool, but I don't know that it was super beneficial. So.
Yeah, we can talk a little bit. outside, if you want, about those platforms. But yeah, they can be helpful, but it is more about building the relationships. So you can have a platform that gives you a whole bunch of names and email addresses to shoot emails out, but you're really not going to be able to get those stories unless you are sitting and spending the time contacting and following up and then setting up the interviews, and it's a whole process. So yes, they can be helpful to just build an initial list of contacts. That's what I would say about that. Yes, one more. I think we just have time for one more.
How much time should the owner of the company or CEO allocate for PR purposes? So the owner of or executive of Destico brand, what should be monthly time allocation so PR company in-house or outside can actually, have this good working relationship?
It depends on if you're going to be the one managing it. So is it just, you mean just your time to do interviews and things like that? Or are you the one managing the day-to-day?
No, just interviews.
Okay. I would say keeping a little bit of a couple hours a week where you have free time that you can slot interviews when they come up, because that's the hardest thing. You're not going to have them every single week, but when an opportunity comes up, a lot of times it's timely and they want to talk to you, and if you don't have anything on your schedule for 3 weeks, you might miss that opportunity. So that's, I would just say, leaving those buckets of time, and then also having the time to talk to whoever on your team is the one that is managing your PR, so that they know what's going on in your world, so that they can share it too. Because there's going to be things that you might know that they don't, and so making sure that you have that connection. So I would just say a couple hours of like blocked time plus a touch base with whoever's managing it.
Yeah, I would say about 8 hours of dedicated kind of management time. But when you have a story, I mean, for us with the DOE or our annual Toys for Tots donation or like hurricane season, you got to be on call and you got to take the opportunities that come your way. And like during the DOE, it was all week, and I lost an entire week. I wouldn't say lost; it was time well spent. But you can't say no to those commitments because they're so incremental to the brand.
Yeah, I was just going to reiterate that you have to be kind of on call, especially if you are doing a big PR push and knowing that there are pretty tight deadlines. So that interview is going to come up and it's probably going to be today or tomorrow, especially if you did a press release. But also, if you have a trusted person on your team that's managing that PR, that if someone's looking for a quote or just a line from you as that thought leader, that maybe they can draft it on your behalf in your voice, and you're doing more of like a tweak review. That will certainly take less time than an interview, but knowing that some of those things come up last minute and just being flexible with your schedule and capitalizing on those opportunities is really important.
Yeah, like the best way to manage time effectively is having a person who really, to your point, like understands your brand voice, getting to a point in that relationship where you just trust that they're going to draft the quote. You may not even need to review it, and written Q&As, same thing. They just, they're going to hit the messaging, and it's going to sound authentically you, and you don't even need to review it. But then, making the time for the things that really do matter. Like, for instance, whenever we have a studio opening, and again, we're still small. We have 17 units open only, but our president flies and goes to the studio opening and shows up, and that's an important touch point for our franchise owner. And also, it helps drive media locally. So I think making those efficiencies when you can, but then also making the time when it could really be impactful.
Great. I'm going to have to, I could talk about PR all day, and I will. And I'll talk about it with you all night tonight if you want to. But yeah, we do have standing meetings with our clients every other week. It's, a 30 to 45-minute call to go over all the stories and the updates, and then we expect them to be available anytime an interview comes up, because it's gold. It's really hard to get those reporters to want to talk with you. So when they do, you better just do it. And usually those interviews don't last very long. And then you just milk those 30 minutes for all you can, like they've been doing on social.
And make sure your agency or whoever's managing it internally knows the best way to get a hold of you quickly in those situations. Like, are you somebody that needs a phone call? Do you need a text? Like, that's probably not something you email and it's going to get lost in everything.
Yeah. Yep. All right. Thank you so much. You've been a great audience, and thank you to my amazing panelists, and I appreciate you.